Hello, my name is Zodian and welcome to my channel. I'm returning after several months break due to a combination of reasons. Tonight I will speak about the Blitzkrieg debate and land warfare. So this seminar, this series of videos about strategic studies started with general issue of strategy, definition and so on. Then several classics were discussed like Sun Tzu Machiavelli. Afterwards, we took some more specific strategies such as sea warfare and air warfare. And now is the topic also of land warfare. And land warfare was so dominated at least until recently by this idea of Blitzkrieg, the idea that of a fast war which relies on tanks and airplanes, a combination of tanks and airplanes, which is meant to confuse and disorient the enemy and to fragment his forces. And this way, the victory is obtained by movement and by flank attacks and by encirclements instead of let's say annihilation battles or let's say attrition. There is a debate about Blitzkrieg, which was launched by the German historian Karl-Heinz Frieser, and he argued that what we think about Blitzkrieg, what I said before, is generally a myth, or at least is very easy to speculate in propagandistic goals. And as we have seen in the later years, this idea of a fast military victory is very influential. Russia relied in 2022 on a form of blitzkrieg. Recently, the Trump administration hoped that fast bombardments will lead to Iran's, let's say, defeat. So, certain kind of defeat. While some means differ, the overall goal is the same: to use military power in a very fast and offensive and expansionist manner, and to ignore other types of military deployment, such as defense and deterrence. Okay, uh, this is the summary, and like in the other videos, there's an introduction, so summary, a discussion of case studies, and here is Fifi the cat. Then the Blitzkrieg, the concept of Blitzkrieg, the strategic errors of Nazi Germany, Wehrmacht and German army vulnerabilities, and so on. So this is the overall plan. Okay, this is the main topic. The main topic again is model land warfare and strategy. And at the end of this video, the audience should have a better grasp of several ideas, such as the meaning of blitzkrieg, several concepts related to so several meanings of this term, and current debates about blitzkrieg, fast war, lightning war. Okay. Uh, so this video is basically based on the strategy studies seminar which I taught several years ago. I thank to Professor Radu Kukuta for allowing me to go online with him. For this session, I replaced the text. So this text of Karl-Heinz Frieser is a new one in this course. The previous was about the concept developed by Fuller, who is basically one of the initiators of Blitzkrieg, of this idea that to combine airplane and tanks. But I think that for today is more important to discuss this thesis who try to criticize our ideas of Blitzkrieg, and the main reasons why is that people tend to blindly trust the expansion, military expansion, and that there are easy solutions, easy military solutions to complicated political or strategic issues, and this is Karl-Heinz Frieser thesis is that this is an illusion, this is a legend. So we don't have simple military force-based solutions to complicate the political issues. People who think that confuse these several notions about strategy, especially the idea of several levels, and the result is you go from war to war to war, from crisis to crisis until defeat. So basically, sound strategical thinking should be based on good concepts and value and let's say valid ideas. Okay, so this is Karl-Heinz Frieser Romanian edition, which I like more than the Amazon, the American one, because it is very illustrative. So you can basically read the thesis from the cover. So up you have the image, the propaganda of German army at the beginning of World War II. So it's a modern army which uses cars and tanks and so on. And down there is the real German army, which was mostly powered by foot and horses. Only 10% of German army in 1940 was motorized. So the German army wasn't a Blitzkrieg army; it was a conventional, classical, typical army for that time. What the difference was the way its forces were employed, and this is basically what Frieser say. So, first, why do we speak about Blitzkrieg? So we speak about Blitzkrieg because Blitzkrieg is on the news, and the Blitzkrieg is not on the news; it is also in the mind of decision makers. One example is Russia. Russia, who for a long, for at least a while in 2022, tried to first conquer Ukraine, and then when attrition prevailed, it tried to lower its goals to gain two major regions in Ukraine. So basically, like in World War One and partially like in World War Two, this war had um, period of movement and a period of attrition. So this happened with very different technology. So we see hypersonic missiles, but the strategic results are somehow similar. The same is Trump and his war with Iran also started like a fast war. So in the beginning, the Trump administration hoped that Iran will bow down, but this didn't happen, and now the Trump administration try to find a negotiated solution an attrition warfare, to a long or at least a longer medical warfare, and this approach contrasts with Russia approach who still goes on with the war. Okay, now let's look at Frieser main argument. So the first is that the 1940 German offensive, which means the offensive launched in May against most France, Belgium, Netherlands, Luxembourg, it was an improvisation. So the German didn't have for a long time a master plan about how to defeat France, which was its most important land enemy. But this was a result of various factors which Fraser describes in details. Now, the main sources of the plan who led to the fall of France, was proposed by a group of officers who were on a low position, like Erich von Manstein and Heinz Guderian, but their ideas were not welcomed by German army leadership. Uh, Another cause was that Hitler was a dictator of Germany and who was responsible for Holocaust and for the World War II, started this war but without having for Frieser a very clear plan. So basically, Frieser argues that Hitler was a bad strategist. and he lacked a plan. The German army had several plans, but they were modeled after World War One, so they're basically forms of attritional warfare. And this group of military modernizers came with an alternative plan, which was called by Winston Churchill, later was called Sickle Cut. So basically, was the intention was to break the French front, the French meaning the Allied front, and encircle the best armies of who were somewhere disposed in the north, and then conquer France. Now, this plan was supported at one time by Hitler, but Frieser shows that Hitler didn't understood the strategical meaning of this plan, and he got scared by the results. So he thought the results were too risky, and he tried to control the movement to slow it down. This led to the Dunkirk operation, the Dynamo operation, in which Britain managed to rescue its major land forces, and this meant that the 1940 plan wasn't pursued to its or didn't manage to achieve all its goals since Britain continued to fight. Now, this strategic failure by Germany, who Germany actually started the war on two fronts, which it could win because there was always another adversary. So France was defeated, then there was Britain, then Germany attacked the Soviet Union, and then it failed. So this strategic failure was compounded by the success of Blitzkrieg. Why? Because the German leadership started to think that it had a magical solution, a new way of war called Blitzkrieg. And this Blitzkrieg, which started as an improvisation, was transformed in a method by Germany, especially against Soviet Union, but also in part against Britain. Germany failed in its air campaign against Britain in August, autumn, or September 1940. So this is the first major failure, and this was also a bit of a blitzkrieg, but it was an air war for which the Luftwaffe, the Air Force, wasn't prepared at all. Then Germany launched the war against the Soviet Union, which he tried to plan it as a blitzkrieg, but it didn't work out because the regime held, the Soviet regime held, and there was also space for it to outmaneuver the Germans. So Blitzkrieg started for Frieser as an improvisation. It led to partial success against France because French leadership made some mistakes. But when it was transformed from an operational improvisation to a grand strategy of Germany, it was a failure. So this means that you cannot have simple military solution to complicated political problems, and we need to remember that even today. So this is the main conclusion. Now, there are several examples of blitzkrieg, of fast wars. For example, one is this German offensive against the West, but there are others. The other is Operation Barbarossa, which means the campaign against the Soviet Union. Then there is the 1967 war. The 1967 war, the 6 Days War, was won very fast by Israel, and Israel gained the Palestinian territory, which are the lands which are now called the Palestinian territories. But this military victory didn't lead to political solutions. So again, Blitzkrieg offers the illusion of simple answers, but the political context remains complicated. And the others are basically Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine from 2022, which started as a, well, partial case of Blitzkrieg. It wasn't a full Blitzkrieg because Russian Air Force acted bizarre. It was very, let's say, was more timid than expected. And the two American bigger large-scale American operation in the Middle East, the original shock and awe in 2003 against the Saddam Hussein regime, and the war launched by Trump administration against Iran, which also is based on the shock impression of bombardments and so on. And okay, so now this is the most important message of the book. So there are two important meanings of the word blitzkrieg. One is that is a practice. So it's an operational or tactical behavior by armies, which can lead to local success. Local means tactical or operational. So you can win a battle or you can win a campaign by employing Blitzkrieg, but in case of war, it is more the overall war. It is more complicated. So the tactical means infiltration by small and mobile units. So this is an alternative to and attritional warfare. So instead of massing infantry, so massing forces to breach trenches, you try to infiltrate them and try to find a weak spot, move inside them, and then circle around other strong points, avoid strong points, hit other weak points until the whole line in the end collapses. So this is a tactical use of Blitzkrieg or assault teams. It was created during World War One, especially in 1980 by Germany. Now, the other is the operational. In this case, the difference is the level of activities. So, tactical is the fighting, the actual combat, and operational is the campaign. So, there are more series of fights, let's say, but it's not as wide as the overall strategical or political level is under them. So, operational means you must have, instead of small teams, you must have large units. For example, armor divisions and air fleets. And they combine, and their main target is to disrupt the enemy command and control and communication. And at the time there are no computers, but today there are now. So I just modernized it a bit. So the idea is to confuse the enemy head. So you must confuse the enemy head, and even if the enemy is equal or superior, he won't have the ability to gather his strength and fight back in an efficient way, and he will lose the war. So basically, this operational version is what happened with France in 1940, who had a lot of capabilities and up to a point had, for example, better tanks than Germany, and but still lost the war. Now, so these tactical operations are the most important meanings of Blitzkrieg from, let's say, practical point of view. But there is also the myth. The myth of Blitzkrieg is that you can find a solution, find a military answer to complex political issues. So this is both as a military strategy, overall war strategy, and as a political grand strategy. The idea is that in both modern and contemporary conditions, usually the strength of the state and the production power are more important than simply combat and operations. Because on the long term, the side who produces most has the best chance to win a traditional conventional war. So we are speaking now about with Blitzkrieg about conventional land warfare. So basically, we have formal armies who fight against each other. It's not about guerrilla, hybrid, and so on. Okay, now a short reminder that for Frieser, the tactical operational meanings of Blitzkrieg are okay. The myth is that you can have a global strategy and try to win smaller war after small war and gain some, let's say, local or global hegemony. Okay, now his book is very detailed, and it starts from general to particulars. It starts from how the strategy, from the concept and how the strategy was established, and then it goes down to tactics, and even to small scale tactics, including how German passed the main rivers with boats and so on. So it's basically very detailed. Now, Frieser argues that Blitzkrieg was used in various contexts, and its origin is in German, and in part is related to the German tradition of fast wars, but it has a specific connotation, which is this idea of independent tank and air groups which work together. So the main difference between the traditional German use of force. And the Blitzkrieg is that Blitzkrieg require clear operational groups, which are division corps or armies. This varies with period. Okay, so then a major thesis for Frieser is that the Blitzkrieg as a strategy and Blitzkrieg as operation are contradictory because he argues that a strategy is a gamble. So how war in a way is a gamble because there's a lot of uncertainty, and as Clausewitz points out, and as modern, let's say, statistical research on war shows, is that very often the war initiator, the party which starts the war, loses it. So you start the war, but you cannot know for sure that you will win. So it's a gamble. Now, inside this gamble, Blitzkrieg is a second gamble. So you gamble inside of a gamble. So it's a double risk solution. Now, in the book, he shows the example, for example, that there was a bottleneck of tanks in Ardennes. So if the Allied Air Force could see this long traffic bottleneck inside of Ardennes, the German Blitzkrieg would have been finished. Therefore, it needed a lot of chance for it to succeed. So it's not a bulletproof tactic, not even at the operational or tactical level. And as a strategy is even more risky. So we need to remember that Blitzkrieg, this idea of fast warfare, is a gamble, is not very certain. Sometimes it works. When it works, it is because of a combination of particular condition, but is not a bulletproof solution. So when you see that someone speaks about wars which are won fast, people should react with a lot of skepticism. Then Frieser emphasized on and on in his book that the Nazi leadership, especially Hitler, was bad at strategy. They started the war that could win. If you look at the power sources, Germany was overwhelmed by its potential enemies. So it started both world wars were fought by Germany against more or less the same enemies. And guess what? The result of the Second World War was also that Germany was defeated. At the beginning of a war, it lacked a war plan against Britain, and the plans against France were very bad. Were based on World War One, as you say. This is from the book. This is basically the proposal by von Manstein. So this is the sickle. You see here the sickle, and the German army was supposed to cut the Allied forces in half, encircle the one from the north, which were the best Allied forces, destroy them, and then turn to south. You see here. You see here is there's a second arrow, and conquer the rest of France. This sickle cut was supposed to s- capture, to force the entire northern flank, let's say northern groups, to surrender and to defeat them, but a part of them escaped to Dunkirk. As you see the town. Now, other errors. The German economy was not ready for a protracted war, was in state of partial mobilization, which meant that it couldn't provide the main tools for the army to fight the war. The weapon acquisition was planned to finish at 1914 during 1944. Hitler, as a strategist, was both a gambler and he hesitated. And another thing was that the military leadership was very conservative, with the exception of these lower ranks of modernizers. So basically, Germany wasn't very well prepared for a world war. It wasn't even prepared for a regional war. Okay, so now let's look at German army as a specific group. It was dominated by World War One mentality, which meant attrition at range warfare. In the Poland campaign, it only used they relied a lot on geography, disposition, and India had operation level of armored forces. Then the campaign against France was postponed several times. There were problems with logistic personnel instruction and so on. It also, for a long time, elected an operation looking for Blitzkrieg in this specific meaning of combination between tanks and airplanes. Its equipment wasn't the best, and its success comes from practice, especially by this officer who often broke the orders or ignored them or distorted them, which is where information has with them having Rommel. And there was a lot of friction inside Germany various level of command. Okay, so the sickle cut, the plan, which this is a sickle cut, this is a sickle cut, was the name, the sickle cut name came from, was created by Mr. Churchill. So this plan was created by Marshall and Guden, who was all friends and talk a lot, consulted with each other. And the most important thing is that its execution relied on fair accomplice or on the ground the results by its officer. Then this practical improvisation, or at least this kind of, let's say, small rebellion, it became a strategy. So from a pragmatical local solution, it was transformed in a, it was generalized and transformed in a wide scale strategy, which is became problematic and led to the destruction of Germany. And of course, there are critics against the Frieser thesis. The most important was that Germany always had, since like Frederick the Great, he had this strategy of short offensive warfare, and that Frieser thesis isn't that revolutionary, but you must remember that Frieser underlined this major difference between operational and strategical levels, or if you want, between practical and concrete results and the highly ambitious, very arrogant strategies. And I think that his point is important, and we need to remember this lesson that the temptation to rely on simplistic military solution, especially on military expansionism, is can lead to disaster even with the technology of today. Okay, so the major conclusion for this video are: one, this thesis, this Frieser thesis, is similar to the cult of offensive interpretation, which argues that there are misperceptions related to the easiness of expansion, which led to disaster in world wars, especially in World War One. Second is we should be highly skeptical when a politician or decision maker argues in favor of military expansion, stating that it will be fast and low without cost, or with low cost, because wars are unpredictable and offensive can be mythical. Frieser basically has shown that Blitzkrieg worked in a particular setting, but when it was extrapolated, generalized, it led to failure. Now, I also like in the Romanian edition, besides that the cover, that Mihail Ionescu offer a summary of this extrapolation. Mihail Ionescu was my PhD coordinator and a military historian, and he shows the various campaign. He describes the various campaign by Germany and how the idea of a Blitzkrieg was extrapolated into an overall strategy, grand strategy, and so on. There are also debates. For example, an important didactical value of this book is that it shows why these levels of activity, tactical, operational, and strategical matter in practice, not just in theory. Another issue is that we need to discuss the advantage or disadvantage of Blitzkrieg. Blitzkrieg can offer a solution to restore movement against the traditional and high costly forms of war, but on the one hand and on the other hand, it can lead to disaster. So it's a gamble. Uh, Again, we need to emphasize this distinction that Frieser makes between strategy and operation, and he shows why this matters. It is still highly debatable, so the debates go on whether his thesis is definitive or not, but I kind of like it. And further issue which can debate is the role that military modernizers played in this initiative. That was okay, this is the bibliography. So this lesson has ended. This seminar has ended. Thank you, and if you like the video, like, subscribe, comment, and so on. Have a nice evening.